From Fox 8 Sports, this is the Overtime Podcast.
From the Fox 8 studios in New Orleans, this is the Fox 8 Overtime Podcast. I'm your host, Sean Fazende, riding shotgun as he does each and every podcast. It's Andre Johnson.
Junior.
Do not forget the Junior. It's very important to remember the JR at the end of the name. Before we get into today's content, be sure to like, to share, to rate, to review. If you're watching us on YouTube, do us a favor, hit that subscribe button, get the bell notification. But when we drop that fire content, also hello to the Gulf Coast Sports and Entertainment Network. Glad you have found us here. All right, Andre, it is Monday in the city of New Orleans. It is a new month, not just a new week, a new month as well. So fresh start, fresh beginnings. It's a big week, or a big month in the NFL in the month of June. We'll get to that in just a second. But first things first, how you feeling on this Monday?
I'm feeling good. You know, was up late last night watching the LSU Tigers. I was actually here, and I left here at the very beginning of the first inning to go home, get some food real quick, come back. It's about a 15-minute drive. I left top of the first. I get home, it's already 3-0. I said, oh yeah, LSU's cruising through Little Rock. This is gonna be easy. Come to find out, 3 hours later, the LSU Tigers laid an egg, and they got to play again today for a spot in the Super Regional, so I was not happy.
No, I wasn't happy either. And look, I love college baseball, so I know this is a Saints content show, but just to say, in the regional round, when you get to this part, you got to win 3 games. Sometimes, if you notice around college baseball, a lot of high-scoring games because everybody's deep into their pitching staffs. So the fact that LSU struggled pitching to me was not surprising. The fact that they couldn't score more than 4 runs against Little Rock's 4th pitcher, which ended up being a middle reliever by the end of the game, was incredibly disappointing. But hopefully, by the time you see this, or maybe a few hours after you see this, hopefully by Tuesday, if you're watching it on Tuesday, LSU will have moved on to the Super Regionals to face West Virginia. If not, might be some conversations up in Baton Rouge, because I just don't know how you come back from that. So, but I think this LSU is going to win tonight. All right, back to the topic at hand. Saints, big week in a big month, I should say, in the big week too, but big month in the NFL calendar. June 1st is coming and gone. Today is obviously June 2nd. So all those post-June 1st cuts, or in the Saints' case, post-June 1st retirements become official. We know about the retirement of Derek Carr. We know about the retirement of Ryan Ramczyk. But bookkeeping measures, they retire after June 1st. That means you split the rest of the dead money between this year and next year. So that's where the cap savings will really come into play next year for the Saints, and that should balance out the books at least enough to where you're insanity levels. You're not in just utterly what are we doing levels. You're at least some level of, okay, at least I'm in the same ballpark of some other teams. Not like when you look at the salary cap space, you'll see 20 over, 10 under, and then you see the Saints right down here, $72 million over the salary cap. So that will be a good thing, and that is regardless of how you want to say it, that was the parting gift Derek Carr left the New Orleans Saints. So that is obviously a big deal. So when that becomes official, obviously the books will get balanced. But I wanted to get into this topic today because Saints entering their 3rd week of OTAs will be able to go out there, watch on Thursday. But it is list season, and you know, we did last week the look at. I'm not sure what rating it was again. The name escapes me, but the Saints were 32nd in the NFL. So when I looked at that and we went through that subject, I thought to myself, okay, well, why don't we go through the Saints roster and truly define who the best players are, not just on the Saints roster, but with respect to the entire NFL. So let's frame it like this. How many top 10 players around the NFL do the Saints have? That's where we want to go with the big picture.
Right, you know, we've got a few names here, and once again, this is in relation to the rest of the league. So we know one name that's going to come up, Alvin Kamara. Is he a top 10 running back in the league? Is Chris Olave a top 10 wide receiver in the league? Is Eric McCoy a top 10 safety or center in the league, excuse me? So that's where we're going to go, starting with Sean. We both have one who we think is undisputed.
Well, let's see. I think we might be in a little bit of a disagreement here. Well, not undisputed, but I have my number one drop. Like, he is number one because when I saw the PFF grade and I saw the where he landed on that PFF grade, I knew he was good. And I saw the PFF grade, and he was the number one player at this position all last year. Number one graded player at this position. So to me, My surefire top 10 Saint is Eric McCoy. Center, number 78, rock solid in the middle. We saw what happened when he was not available. Now, I will say, got to start being a little more available because it's been a couple seasons now where he's missed a significant portion of the season. And frankly, the different production has caused a massive issue with the rest of the offense. I do think this year they're a little more built to handle it. But I think when you look at the age of Eric McCoy, the experience of Eric McCoy, the respect he gets around the league, to me, he is the surefire top 10 player. Now, I'm going to say Alvin Kamara is in my top 10. I think he is probably somewhere around 9 or 10 in terms of running backs around the NFL. But when I looked at the PFF top 32 running backs going into the season, they had him down at number 20. I was not okay with that. I still think Alvin's got plenty of tread on the tire. I still think he's going to benefit greatly from the Kellen Moore scheme. So I have my surefire guys, Eric McCoy, and I have my borderline top 10 in terms of probably somewhere between 9 and 10 as Alvin Kamara.
My surefire guy was Alvin Kamara.
Okay.
That's the one guy who I said I don't want to hear any conversation about him not being top 10. And you can look at some of the other names that would be in the conversation to be on that list. And you've got Saquon Barkley, who had the amazing season last year. Christian McCaffrey coming off the injury, but we know what CMC can do when he's healthy. Jahmyr Gibbs in Detroit. Great young running back. Bijan Robinson in Atlanta, great young running back. Jonathan Taylor still ran for 1,400 last year, but after those 5, I think you have to throw Alvin Kamara in there. I mean, I don't know. I certainly can't think of 19 guys ahead of Alvin Kamara.
No.
I don't know how he lands 20 after last season, but I can't even think of 10 guys over AK. I think AK, he had 2 down seasons before last year, but last year he bounced back in the new Clint Kubiak system, and he was very effective. I mean, the Saints didn't have a lot of bright spots offensively last year because of injuries and people who were in and out of the lineup, but there were 2. Alvin Kamara and Taysom Hill. Taysom Hill obviously was injured a little more than Kamara, but when Kamara was available, he was a game changer. And he was a game changer no matter who was at quarterback, whether it was Carr, whether it was Rattler, the little bit he played with Jake Hayner. He was a game changer when the Saints were just auditioning offensive linemen in and out because there were so many injuries up front. Alvin Kamara still consistently managed to put his stamp on any game he played. So to me, he's my undisputed number 1. Now, Eric McCoy, he's also in my list. He's probably somewhere in that 5 to 8 range for me.
Where do you have Kamara ranked?
If I had to put him,
I had him about 8th or 9th.
I'd have him about 5 or 6.
Okay.
5 or 6 for
fair.
me. Eric McCoy, I'd have probably in that 5 to 8 range as well in regards to centers. And I mean, Eric McCoy, once again, you talked about his durability. We need him to be available because when he's available, the Saints win. They were technically 4-3 in games he played. I'm not counting Philadelphia. He got hurt on the 3rd snap of the game, so I'm not counting that as a game he played. You take out Philadelphia, they were 4-2 when Eric McCoy played last year. 1-10 without him. Eric McCoy is a game changer. And you don't always refer to a center as a game changer because offensive linemen get overlooked a lot in this league. But when you look at what Eric McCoy does, just how he brings everybody else together, how he's able to elevate Taliese Fuaga, who's playing on the left for the first time in his career as a rookie last year. Elevate Cesar Ruiz, someone who he has incredible chemistry with. Elevate Trevor Penning, who had the best season of his career last year. Elevate whoever was left guard next to him because they played so many people there. So yeah, Eric McCoy is top 10 to me. Alvin Kamara is top 10 to me. They're both kind of in the middle of that top 10, but if I'm making a top 10, they're both in there.
So we agree, both those guys are in top 10. I have another guy. It's hard to say he's top 10 because it's hard to define what he does. And I think we know where we're going there. But I think you got to include him because he's so unique and he's been such an asset for the Saints for so long that there aren't 10 players that come remotely close to what he does. Obviously, he's offensive weapon. He's OW, and that of course is Taysom Hill. I understand he's going to be 35 years old. I understand he's coming off of an injury, but I don't think there's a player in the NFL that is harder to prepare for. I don't think there's a player in the NFL that allows an offensive coordinator to gather so much information when he is on the field that they use to their advantage, then obviously Taysom Hill. There aren't 10 Taysom Hill types in the NFL. In fact, are there even 2 or 3 that are even remotely versatile enough that way you can say something like that? So I put him on here because he's truly one of one. So if we're doing top 10, and even if he's only one, it's one of one, I think he's in a category by himself. I think because of how much he has been, that versatility has been leaned on. And I think we saw it more last year than ever before. And that was before the guy that basically invented the position, invented the role for Taysom. I think it was even expanded even more under Clint Kubiak. I think you have to include Taysom Hill on this list because he is so unique. He's so hard to defend. The only drawback, obviously, now is he's getting older. We haven't seen him in a long time.
Yeah.
I hope it's not the end for him. We talked about retirement earlier in the program. I hope it's not the end for Taysom Hill because I'd like to see him get one more run. I think this was probably the last year with him for number 7. But if he can come back, and for all intents and purposes, when they talk about him, they seem excited. But then, they talked about Derek Carr and they were excited about him. Right. So if he's back, every creative offensive mind, particularly a young offensive mind like Kellen Moore, is going to gravitate to that skill set. So to me, I've got to put Taysom Hill because I think obviously he's got great respect inside the Saints building, but he has great respect around the NFL. I don't think there's any doubt about that.
See, I put a question mark next to Taysom because when talking top 10 in regards to the rest of the league, I didn't know what position to put him in. But I agree with you. He is one of one. There's nobody who can do what he does. And we see him multiple times every year just completely take over games in a way that players whether you want to call him a fullback, whether you want to call him a tight end, players at that position, they just don't take over games like that. Look at what he did against Cleveland last year.
Yeah.
I mean, he had 200 total yards with less than 10 touches? Like it was insane. Like
Seattle a couple years before that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like just the way that Taysom Hill is complete. I think he's the most dynamic player on this team. I think he's the most dangerous weapon. I think, like you said, he's the hardest to game plan for. And just the versatility is something that I don't know if I've ever seen in my lifetime. I mean, I remember being in Carolina a few years ago, and Alvin Kamara was suspended. Jamal Williams gets hurt. They're just like, well, throw Taysom at running back. Yeah. We've seen Taysom play quarterback. We've seen him play tight end, wide receiver, fullback. Just when all of those injuries were happening last year, it was like, well, where do we need help the most? Just throw Taysom there. So yeah, Taysom's in a league of his own, so I can't even call him top 10. Like you said, he is one of a kind.
But I had to include him here because, at the end of the day, you have something no one else has. So I think you've got to respect, at least in terms of where would that. If it were just a kind of a cutesy thing where, look at this guy, he can play a little offense, play a little defense, but it doesn't really make an impact on games, then I'd probably, okay, it's just a fun little storyline and maybe becomes a fan favorite. But no, they have leaned in on Taysom Hill's unique skill set. He's embraced that and really taken on all the mental workload and physical workload as well that comes with that. So that's why I had to put him on my list as I put the category borderline top 10, but really it's top 1 because there's only one Taysom in this role. So that was it for me in terms of players I was willing to put into the top 10. I have another category called kind of on the cusp that I probably could talk myself into being the 10th best player at this position, but it's dicey. So what were your other ones in the top 10?
I've still got 2. And these are probably my borderline picks for me. Guys you could put at 9 or 10, make an argument for. You could probably put them anywhere between 9 and 14 or 15.
That's probably what it is, yeah.
For me, I'm sticking closer to 9. Number 1 is Brian Brzee. I think Brian Brzee, we asked him last season, coming off a rookie season, ups and downs, we said, we need you to make a big second-year leap. To me, he did that. Brian Brzee, someone else who completely took over games. I mean, that New York Giants game, when the Saints were so banged up and Derek Carr plays the last snap of his career and, it's a low-scoring game. That's a game that Brian Brzee just completely took over in every single way on defense and even on special teams, making the game-winning field goal block. I mean, Brian Brzee, to me, is grown to be the best defensive player on this team. He's great, especially when it comes to interior pass rushers and getting to the quarterback. He's still working on the run aspect of his game, but when you look at some of the other guys like around him, I saw like one list that had Christian Wilkins in Miami as the 10th best player, I'm taking Brian Brzee over Christian Wilkins. So for what Brian Brzee, the jump he made last year, I expect him to continue to get better this year, because right now it's probably debatable that he's the best player on the Saints defense right now. You could probably argue him, Justin Reed, Tyron, Demario Davis. After this season, I don't think it's debatable, and I think Brian Brzee could be in the conversation to be a top 5 interior defensive lineman in the league. And then my second top 10 guy, another name I just mentioned, Demario Davis, because no matter how old he gets, number one, he is consistently available. It is very few and far between that Demario Davis has to miss a game because of injury. And number two, just the way he holds down the middle of the field. Once again, he's in a position where he's got Pete Werner next to him. Maybe then he had Anthony Orji next to him, DeMarco Jackson next to him. He played with Caden Ellis next to him. There are so many players that Demario Davis has had to play around, and he's the glue that holds that defense together. He's still one of the best run stoppers at that linebacker position in the NFL. So when I look at the hierarchy of middle linebackers, to me, I can make an argument that he's in that 8 to 10 range.
All right, so using those parameters, you said somewhere between like 9 and 14.
Yeah.
These are 3 players I came up with. Demario Davis. I think he's got. This is probably going to be his last year with the Saints. I think he's got one more run in him, and he hasn't really shown an obvious sign of decline. I think at the very least he's a top 14 linebacker, and some days he still looks like the best defender on the field. And then from a cerebral standpoint, he obviously gets everyone in line. He's got some of the best instincts you ever find at the linebacker position. It's just a matter of he is getting a little bit older, and it's not so much him getting older and his play falling. It's other younger players moving up that tend to grab these spots a little bit higher than Demario Davis. Because if there's a 27-year-old versus a 35-year-old, they're probably going to go with the 27-year-old. The other one was Tyron. 2 other ones. Tyrann Mathieu was the other one. I didn't realize this, but since 2022, when he got to New Orleans, he's got the 4th most interceptions by a safety in that time span from 2022 to 2024. The other ones were Kirby Joseph, who had 9 last year, 17 during that time span. Xavier McKinney, 11 interceptions during that time span. And one of my favorites in the league, Jesse Bates, 14 interceptions during that time span. So Jesse Bates was it 2 years ago in Atlanta? They picked off Derek Carr at the goal line, took it the other way. Things went crazy. So Tyrann Mathieu is another one that he probably gets slept on a little bit, because if the Saints had had a little bit more success, I kind of feel like his productivity would be a little more in the limelight, but obviously it has not been. It's kind of flown under the radar, which is kind of funny because of how much of a Louisiana, New Orleans son he is. To have 10 picks over a 3-year window, that's exactly what you wanted out of Tyrann Mathieu. The other one, Justin Reed. I already mentioned Demario Davis, but Justin Reed as well. Did not realize this, just doing some research. During the playoffs up until the Super Bowl, from like week 15 on, he was the Chiefs' best defender. And I think, we talked a lot about position groups, a lot of unknowns, and there are a lot of unknowns. But if you got the best of Tyrann Mathieu and you got the best of Justin Reed, who is an in-the-box guy who hits guys, coming over the middle, a run-stuffing type player, I think you can have a dynamic safety core that offers you some versatility, and a guy that can, be a ball hawk in Tyrann Mathieu, and a guy that can provide a physical punch in Justin Reed. This is a guy that's probably, throughout his career, has been hovered around that top 10, top 12 range. I like the signing of the Saints. They had him. It was really good value when they signed him. So I think Justin Reed could, going into the season, probably somewhere in that top 12 range.
Justin Reed and Tyrann Mathieu, those were my borderlines. Those were the ones who, for me, were probably just outside of the top 10. Like with Brzee and Demario, I can make an argument that they're the 8th best at their position in the league, the 9th, the 10th. Tyrann and Justin kind of fell closer to that 11 to 16 range for me, but I can definitely see why somebody would put them in the top 10. I mean, Tyrann Mathieu, like you said, he's done everything you could ask him to do in his, return to New Orleans, so to speak, since he was raised here. I mean, he's led or been tied for the lead for interceptions on this team every year that he's been here. And he came here as an older player. It's not like you got prime, Honey Badger. He came here as an older player and is still consistently making his mark on that defense. And Justin Reed, I mean, that was the biggest signing they made this season or this offseason. So I can definitely see both of those guys in there. Now, for the listeners, I'm sure there's some people screaming at their phones or their TVs.
We got more.
You're forgetting somebody. You're forgetting somebody. What about him? I think we both kind of have in the back of our heads that guy. How are you feeling?
Yeah, so I have a list, and it's who could get on the list with a big year this year. Because to me, the resumes are just a little bit incomplete. One guy you already mentioned, one guy I think we're both in agreement with. So I'll just give you my 4. You ready?
Who we got?
I think the biggest one is Chris Olave. Okay, yep. Can Chris Olave be a top 10 receiver in the NFL? I think the answer is definitively yes. Is he a top 10 receiver in the NFL? I don't see how this is controversial. He is not. He is not. He has not been available enough. He's a guy that's got a tremendous skill set, very smooth, understands, the nuances of playing the position, but he's had a couple scary situations where the season was ended prematurely last year, had a good season in 2023. But I think he's right there. You just keep waiting for that last little hurdle he has to clear to be the top 10 receiver that we know he can be. And I think it can happen this year with a coach like Kellen Moore. Even if there is an unknown at the quarterback position, I still think Chris Olave can do enough to get in there. What do you need for it to be a top 10 receiver? Well, to me, you got to be a consistent 1,000-yard guy, which is, with 17 games, if you stay healthy, is not incredibly difficult. But I want to see a guy that scores a lot of touchdowns. I want to see him better after the catch. And hopefully, he can become durable. So Chris Olave is number 1 on my who could get on the list. Number 2, the player you just mentioned, Bryan Bresee. I love Bresee. I just think the resume is a little incomplete right now. But I think a big year this year with the scheme change, we'll see how he fits. But I think you saw last year was a 7.5 sacks from a defensive tackle spot. Not easy to do. He gets up the field very well. Got to get more consistent. Got to get more well-rounded in the run game. But then again, they added Devon Godchaux to kind of help him out with that. So maybe he won't be asked to do that as much. So I think with Bryan Bresee's skill set, if they can have some success on defense and he has the numbers he's had from last year to this year, I think he gets on the defensive tackle list for top 10 players going into 2026. The other 2, last year's first-round pick, Taliese Fuaga. Well, I think he had a solid rookie year at left tackle, but he's moving to his natural position. If there is a boost in the Saints' offensive line, all 5 are going to get credit. But I think that left-handed to right-handed switch for Taliese Fuaga, if he has a big year, could get him on the list. And the last one is a guy I've liked for a long time, but A, he's a little over in the shadow of the guy playing next to him, and B, sometimes he gets a little undisciplined, which annoys me. That's Pete Werner. I think Pete Werner, there were times in first year he started was 2022, where he was the best player on the field, the best defender on the field. And he's had moments like that throughout his career. He's had some issues here and there when it comes to injury. If he can take that next step, I know he signed the extension last year. If he could take that next step this year, maybe lead the team in tackles, maybe be a TFL guy, maybe be 2 picks, forced fumbles, whatever the case may be, where it's clear like he was when he burst on the scene in 2022, I think Pete Werner can eventually get on the list for top 10 linebackers in the NFL. What about you?
I like those, especially Taliese Fuaga. The one big borderline to me is a guy who I like a lot. I'm rooting for this guy, but I have been critical of him in the past, and that's Chris Olave.
Yeah.
I don't think he's a top 10 receiver. In fact, I think you have to have a conversation to even put him amongst the top 20. And we had a podcast about this a few months back when Ja'Marr Chase got paid, and we were talking about, would you pay Chris Olave $40 million? Because eventually he's going to be the next receiver in line to get paid. And to me, Chris Olave, yes, he's been the number 1 on the Saints. He's done everything you've asked him to do from a Saints point of view, but he's the number 1 receiver on the Saints because it's the Saints.
Is he a true 1, too?
Exactly. I think if he went to a lot of other teams, he'd probably be their number 2. You look at the numbers. 2022, he had just over 1,000 yards, 4 touchdowns. Next season, 87 catches, 1,100 yards, 5 touchdowns. Last year, he was injured, 400 yards, 1 touchdown. And you say, oh, how is Chris Olave in the top 20 even a conversation? Because wide receiver is one of the deepest positions in the league.
That position has exploded.
Ja'Marr Chase, Justin Jefferson, CeeDee Lamb, Amon-Ra St. Brown, A.J. Brown, Puka Nacua, Mike Evans, DK Metcalf, Tyreek Hill. You had rookies like Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas come through last year and do things that Chris Olave hasn't done in his career yet. Jackson Smith and Jigba, Drake London, Garrett Wilson, Nico Collins, George Pickens, Devontae Smith, Jalen Waddle, T. Higgins. These are all names that you can argue are ahead of Chris Olave. So what I want to see from Chris Olave this year, and it'll boost him even more because he's going to be doing it with either a rookie quarterback or a second-year quarterback in Spencer Rattler, I want to see you break out. I want to see Chris Olave have one of those, 1,042 yards. That's nice, but we have to look at where the league is now. This is 2025. This is a passing league, and you get 17 games. At one point, 10, 15 years ago, hitting 1,000 yards as a receiver, that's the cream of the crop. All the really elite receivers, you got to hit 1,000 yards. These days, I don't think you necessarily have to be elite to hit 1,000 yards because of where the game is now. Yeah. The rules are designed so that offenses can pass the ball because the NFL wants to see scoring. So I don't want to see a 1,000-yard, 4-touchdown performance from Chris Olave. I want to see Olave have one of those 1,500-yard, 10, 12 touchdowns type years. That's the kind of year that has people looking and saying, oh, that guy in New Orleans that did that with a rookie, that did that with a second-year quarterback, that's a top 10 receiver. That's a guy that when his time comes around and he asks for 35, 40 million a year, that's a guy where, oh, well, we might think about that. But right now, I need to see the biggest leap out of anybody on this team. I want to see the biggest leap from Chris Olave.
And I think with him, he's the one, it's not, I don't want to use the word disappointing, but it's like you see traces that he has it in him.
Yeah.
It's like, just get there, whether it's because of health or whether it's because of consistency, whether it's because of, remaining focused, whatever the case may be, you have it in you, get there. If he can get there and be a true one, I think that helps, obviously, the entire Saints team. So y'all are free to agree, disagree with those lists. Again, it's McCoy, Kamara is our 2 top 10 guys. No dispute. Kind of borderline guys. I had Matthew, Reed, Demario Davis, and who could get on next is Brzee, Olave, Fuaga, Warren. In about 10 seconds, would you recap your list?
Alvin Kamara and Eric McCoy as the no conversation top 10 guys at their position. Brian Brzee, Demario Davis as the fringe top 10 guys. Right outside, I had Tyron and Justin Reed, and the guy who can get there with a big season this year. We all hope he gets there. Wide receiver, Chris Olave.
All right, we're out of here. For Andre Johnson Jr., I'm Sean Fazende. We'll catch you guys next time on Overtime.